Hello everyone, welcome to another video. In today's video I'm gonna talk a little bit about your PPL flight test for your private pilot's license. This flight test might be the first of many flight tests you're ever gonna do, so you're not really familiar, you don't know what to expect. I know most of pilots, before they do their PPL flight test, they are kind of nervous because, they've never done one, and that's completely normal. Luckily, we have many tools at our disposal to help us with the flight test. I'm gonna share some of these tools with you. I'm gonna give you some notes from my experience with my flight test, some things that I prepared for it, and things I used to make sure I was not nervous on the day of the test. So the flight test is gonna be divided in two parts, the ground portion and the flight portion. Both of those parts, you can have a lot of very good notes and insights just by reading the flight test guide. Flight test guide is available on the Transport Canada's website. It's a very extensive document. You can download a PDF version from the bottom of the page. I'm gonna put the link to the flight test guide in the description of this video, so make sure you open and save that, because you're really gonna need it throughout your training. In there you can find notes on the ground portion, on the flight portion, what they expect from you, and every single thing you might have to know during your flight test. So there are no surprises, there are no, oh my god, I didn't know, I wasn't sure if I needed to know that or not. Everything you need to know is in the flight test guide, and it's gonna be your best friend throughout this process. Let's jump into the ground portion of the flight test. The ground portion, you're gonna sit with the examiner. You probably never met him before. He's not one of your instructors. And this examiner is gonna test your knowledge about the airplane, about the flight you're about to do, about everything you should know to be a private pilot, to take your friends and family with you, just to make sure you're safe and everyone else that's flying with you is also safe. So in the ground portion, he wants to make sure you know your POH, Pilot Operating Handbook, okay? Basically an aircraft manual, just like an AC manual, but for a whole airplane. So if you wanna make some notes, mark some important pages in the POH, do it. During the ground portions, he's gonna ask you where you got the speeds you're giving him from, how did you do the weight and balance, maybe where did you find this takeoff distance from? POH, 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 you can show, okay, this is how I did it. So have some proof how you got your numbers and where you got the numbers from. Before he even asks you about the flight plan, weight and balance and all of that and the route you plan, he might throw some random question that he got from a book that a lot of instructors use and a lot of students should also use, that is called Flight Test Notes. Flight Test Notes is basically the flight test version of the From the Ground Up that we are all familiar from the ground school. So From the Ground Up is an awesome book that most of us use during ground school that covers all the exercises, the theory behind it, and also meteorology, navigation, everything you need to know to become a pilot in the written exam sense of it. For the flight test, the flight test note give you a lot of insights and questions they might ask you during the flight test, and a lot of things you should be able to know and answer at the spot. So if you want to buy this book, review it, go through the questions, it might give you a big boost on your flight test, also on your confidence. For the PPL flight test, you're gonna have to prepare flight plan, and in this flight plan he's gonna ask you things about distance, fuel consumption, time and route, takeoff distance, landing distance. Maybe he's gonna give you a grass-filled airport for the landing, so you need to make sure everything you calculate to take into considerations the conditions of that flight. Weather for the flight should also be taken into consideration. You need to make sure you present the GFA, TEF, METAR, NOTAMs, whatever information you can get from satellites, whatever you want. The more information you have on the flight and more you can show him you did, the least he's gonna try to dig and find mistakes. What else from the ground part? For my flight test, I got a binder and I put some useful information. I had a copy of the checklist of the airplane we were gonna use that day, just so I knew I was familiar with all the critical speeds and emergency procedures. I printed out all the weather information for that flight, so I printed like the GFA, TEFs, METAR, the NOTAMs that applied for my route, and I also called weather briefing to get an idea on like en route parts of my flight that might be a little far from airports with information. And all of these you need to have for the ground portion, because that's when you're going to discuss with the examiner. I also had information on all the airports on my flight plan. Not only the airports I was going to stop at, but also airports that were near the route, just in case you have to do an emergency landing or a precautionary landing somewhere else. You should have the information, not only elevation, ATIS, tower, ground frequencies and runway data, but also the services. Let's say you're flying with your family and someone feels bad in the airplane and you need to land at an airport. What good is it to land there if they don't even have a phone or a hospital near? So make sure you have that information. You can find that in the CFS. They are given by letters and numbers. So yeah, I just wrote that down because it's some useful information. All the speeds with flaps, without flaps, weight and balance, takeoff, landing and distance charts, all that type of stuff you might use for the flight. So you don't have to be looking around on your POH. You can print those pages and have the information ready to go. For your flight test, you're also going to need some forms, the recommendation letter from your instructor. You have to pay the flight test fee, so you have to have the proof of payment from that. Also, in the letter recommendations, how many hours you already have of flight, how many hours of ground school, those things. Your school definitely has a checklist for flight tests, so they can give it to you, so you don't have to worry about remembering everything I'm talking about here, but just so you have an idea if you're still not familiar with it. So after you finish the ground portion, if you didn't do any major mistakes or if you were not lacking any knowledge about the airplane you're flying, not only speeds and everything, but also the physical aircraft. Where is the oil filter? How do you do the walk around? What is that antenna right there? You need to know the aircraft you're flying, right? He might throw some scenarios at you like, oh, what if we go there, do the walk around now, and you see some fluid on the ground? Stuff like that. Have those type of questions in mind just in case you get one of them. If you did everything good in the ground portion, you're ready to start the flight portion of your flight test. And the flight portion, he's gonna see how well and how precise you are doing all the maneuvers you have to do in the flight test. Where can you find all of that information? Again, the flight test guide. The flight test guide is gonna be your best friend. It's gonna give you all the margin of error you have for each exercise, for turns, for steep turns, climbs, descent, landings, takeoffs. Everything you need to do is in the flight test guide. The examiner is gonna have a paper like this, and in this paper they have everything for the flight test, including the ground portion and the flight portion. So documents and airworthiness, airplane performance, weight and ballast, pre-flight inspection, everything you need to do on the ground is here. And then the exercises, taxi, steep turns, low flight, stall, spinning, leaping, takeoff, landing, circuit, and some emergency procedures. And for every exercise you do, he's gonna give you a note from 1 to 4, 4 being perfect, 1 being critical mistake, dangerous flying, fail, okay? You cannot get a 1 on your flight test. You can get a few 2s. Ideally, you want all 3s and 4. If you get a few number 2s, that's okay. You cannot get 4 or 5 number 2s, I'm not 100% sure. You need to aim for 3s and 4. If you fail the flight test on the ground, you're not even gonna go for a flight. He's just gonna stop right there and say, please be better prepared for next time, we can reschedule. If you fail your flight test during the flight part of it, you're gonna stop your flight, come back, maybe he's gonna give you a partial pass and you have to redo the exercises you failed at and continue from there. If you do many things wrong in the flight test, you're just gonna fail the flight test and you're gonna have to book one again and do everything again. By the time you do your flight test, your instructor already flew enough with you to make sure you were ready and prepared for the flight test. So it's all about doing the same thing you already done with your instructor with the examiner. I know the fact that you're flying with a stranger that is there to judge your flying has an emotional toll on our flying. We can get a little nervous, and when we're nervous we can do mistakes we would normally not do, but that's part of it. So that's why you have to be calm and know that you're prepared and you have everything you need, so they're not hunting for ways to find a mistake, you know. Don't overshare information. If you don't know something, don't try to go around and explaining. That's just gonna make things worse. If you don't know something, just say, I forgot this information, but I know where to get it here in the POH or whatever that is. Bring everything you need for your flight test. pen, bring your kneeboard for some notes during the flight, your map, ruler, flight computer, your electronic flight computer, a watch so you can time things. Just be prepared. If your headset has active noise reduction, make sure you bring new batteries just so it doesn't die during the flight test. I have my headset going on and off in my multi-engine flight test, and that was not fun. I couldn't hear properly. I had a hard time communicating with the examiner, and that was not fun. So just make sure everything you bring is fresh and ready to go, and you're gonna be just fine. After you finish your PPL flight test and you get a pass, you can already get a stamp on your student pilot permit until you get your actual license. And with that, you can already enjoy the privileges of being a private pilot. You can take your friends and your family for a ride and have a lot of fun. The flight test is not all you need to get your PPL license. You also need a written exam, of course, and a lot of specific hours in different types of flying. So I'll link a video in the description that's about PPL and CPL requirements. So you can just watch that and make sure you have all the requirements before you apply for your PPL. Once you apply, then you get that stamp and you can fly. If you have any questions about pilot training, don't hesitate in sending me a message on Instagram, Fly with Pedro, or leave a comment down below and I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can. If you want to become a pilot here in Canada, I'll be happy to help you with the process. I'm also making a video about the written exam for PPL. The link will also be down in the description, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next videos coming. Okay? Thank you so much for watching and I'll see you next time.